Hello and welcome to a special edition episode of the Scarf Bagara War with me, Russ Johnson. I'm delighted to be joined by former captain, National League winner, and one of the players that I often thought when we were starting to move up the leagues, this was like a bit of a marquee signing for me. So I'm delighted to be joined and to be talking to tonight, Liam Hogan. You all right, mate?
Thanks for having me, yeah.
Good stuff, good stuff. Tonight's all about you in Stockport County, or the Stockport area, should I say, because I know you did IR trials once, which went into a bit of a broader thing, so we'll concentrate on county. But firstly, I wanted to start with Woodley Sports, because you started off your career there, and there was a few players there that were known to county fans as well. Do you want to take us through that, kind of how it started and how you got into Woodley Sports?
Yeah, so I think I was at the point at the time where I didn't actually foresee me playing football professionally. And it'll be probably from the assistants, really, from Sam Walker, who I was really good friends with, really social group that we had, like Haslam, and actually Anthony Sarcevic was there at the time as well, where we were just obviously having time spent with each other as friends. And I think we went to Ireland for one of these tournaments over in Ireland, and at the time I was like really interested in obviously what he was playing over at Woodley Sports, and I was like, I'll come over and have a game or two, come down to a few sessions, and once I started up, I think Ali Pickering was manager there at the time. So obviously I'd played a couple of games. I'd actually gone out to America to coach on the camps, and at the time I actually got offered a scholarship to play in America. I was working in the gym, I was working as a personal trainer over in Salford, and I bricked it a little bit because it was kind of like, you can't leave, you can't go back, it's going to be from this summer onwards. And my job was sort of saying, look, if you stay, we'll have to sort of give your job up. So I panicked and came back, spoke back to Sam and was like, I'm going to come back to Woodley. So I sort of did my second stint at Woodley with him, and there was Rob Parsonage there, Gavin Salmon and a few of the other lads. And I actually took my brother down as well, so Scott came down with me and we were just sort of playing, and probably really enjoying my football at that time because it wasn't professional, it was just obviously knocking about with that social circle of friends really, and obviously Sam growing up in the area. Which was basically easy for me to jump on the motorway, go to training Tuesday, Thursday nights and play the games on a Saturday, and thought nothing of it. From there I was playing in an array of different positions. I played right wing, right back, and eventually I think I played a game. It was like a Tuesday night game. I played at Halifax and I was at home. I think we drew the game 2-2. I played against James Dean that day, who played up front, who was like at the time, and from then onwards was that target man I'd had a really good game, and approached by Neil Ashman. Neil Ashman came round to my house and said, look, I want to pursue and get you involved down at Halifax. And from there, literally, thinking of nothing coming of it. At the same time, and my best mate, Sars, it was heading for Crewe. And I thought, I'm going to give it a little go and see what it means. It was still part-time football, but obviously Halifax at the time were a big club that were just reformed and going to push themselves really to try and get themselves up the league. And obviously Neil coming to my house was like the first real connection I had with a manager. And obviously I've done a full circle because I'm back at Woodley now with the coaching and don't live too far. And that's probably a really important part of my career really, where it started, because I literally didn't have a direction. It was just playing for fun, it was just playing with that social group, and probably all down to Sam really, and knowing Sam at the time.
Yeah, so we're just coming back to Woodley then, because Woodley at the time would have been before it got built up as Stockport Sports Village. So what's it like? Obviously, we'll cover it in depth in a bit later, but what you're doing there now, but the differences are massive, aren't they?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, from the full-time sort of setup that I'm in now and have been for quite a while, I'm obviously down there seeing the academy side of things, how that's run. It's fantastic, really exciting. But I never had that. So I never had an academy. I had a couple of trials when I was at college. I went to Salford College in Worsley. I had Neil Redfern as a manager. I had Darren Sheridan as a manager. and Phil Dolan, who was like the course organiser, he's obviously over at Oldham himself now, and so again for me, being in and around this Northwest stuff, there's been a lot of full circles I've been in with sort of my social circle and making sort of connections, really kind of revisiting them down the line. And like I said, I'd never had an academy, so to see how an academy runs now and what the children get and the support they get, it's unbelievable. I wish I would have had it, because I wouldn't have known, where I would have ended up. Look at it now, like so far, it's not finished yet, that I've had a good career. Would have gone further, who knows, with that sort of foundation that they put into place now. But I think Alan Lord was there at the time. He's done a lot of recruitment from the area, Alan. Got on with Alan really well, and obviously he's really highly thought of in the area. And it was going to get your wage, and there was coins and notes in a brown paper envelope, and obviously with mine was missing probably 1 or 2 booking fees, and it was short quite a few weeks, but that was my own fault. But yeah, I'd never been used to anything like that. I was literally just playing, so even receiving sort of funds and a salary in terms of that, in a form of cash was new for me and stuff. Yeah. Like I said at the time, I said to my brother, look, come down, come and play some games. And from where it's been at, we've had Clarkey that's been there, who's played for Stockport as well. It's had some really good names that have been in and around for Woodley Sports, and it's great to see that they've never actually, obviously they reformed, and they're at Stockport Town. I think Paul Turnbull's in, obviously another county captain, really heavily linked in there, and it's really good to see the set up from what obviously was just one pitch, and obviously you kick the ball over the back, there was just brambles, trees, a little bit of a field down the back, and now you've obviously got all the pitches, the grass pitch, there's one grass pitch down the back, but all the AstroTurf pitches now, and how well it's run. The gym's just been redone. It's a fantastic sort of hub for the area, and you're obviously seeing now the academy thriving, attracting things from around, the Manchester Uniteds and the Manchester Cities, Liverpool's and sort of those types of teams, and obviously it's gone from strength to strength, having reformed again from obviously when we got back in the Football League. Yeah, absolutely. So don't want to sort of go into too much, but your brother's gone on a bit of a different path to you, hasn't he? So was he never involved in an academy either himself, or has he sort of forged his own way? Yeah, so more so him out of anyone, because I just went into work. Like I said, I was in the gyms, really interested in working in the gyms, and was doing some personal training, and I just got out there and went and joined it works like a teaching company that goes into primary schools and delivers the PE sessions, and I was just in that, so it wasn't really anything that I pursued. But my brother was like 3 years younger at the time, and he'd at his grassroots level played up front, scored countless goals. For me, myself, I've told this probably a few times, I actually played in goal till I was 16. Yeah, I did. I probably had a little stint. I played for my dad's team, and my brother played for obviously another member of the family over at Caddy's Sports, which has had players like Cameron Brannigan come through, and obviously my brother, which was a real sort of strong grassroots club. And I just never really, like I said, pursued it. And Scott scoring goals, and they kind of get the headlines of strikers. He had interest from Everton, he had interest from loads of different clubs that he'd been in on trial with. Rochdale had been one that he'd gone into and came out of before he went to like Ashton and Hyde, when he had a little moment out of the game kind of thing at grassroots again. But yeah, he more so was probably, I would have said, definitely going to go into professional football. He'd sit there and tell me, look, he's going to play in the Championship, he's going to play in the Premiership. When we're playing on computer games together, and just his drive was completely different, and he was just quite, I wouldn't say it was an ego, he was just so super confident that he was just going to do this, and probably because he'd had so much success at his grassroots stuff, and obviously he came through the college a little bit like myself at Salford. He sort of followed in like the paths that I took, but he was just, he had such a talent, and obviously goals, they attract people, and he was taken obviously in at Rochdale at the time, and from there he's banged goals in, and he's sort of said, he's manifested what he said at the time, and he got his move. He ended up with Aston Villa in the Premiership, but he's played in around the Championship for quite a while now, and only recently he's new pastures and a new challenge for him. He wants to get the fun back in the game, and he's gone over to MK Dons, and he's obviously started really well again there, so which I'm not surprised with. So yeah, really indifferent in terms of I sort of put my working career first,
Yeah.
getting that platform in, and just sort of I tell the kids now in the academy, I just played for the fun, and you know, every single game there's different people who are there watching. You just never know. Don't try and put too much pressure on you. Whatever decisions are made for them now in the academy or going forward, because you see it's a real low percentage of children that get through in the academy, and I see them having knockbacks and having chats, and I just listen. There's no set way of making it. Obviously, you're really well supported if you're in them academy sort of scenarios, particularly Stockport's at the minute, which is really thriving. But yeah, I obviously hold I'm super proud of Scott. He's been fantastic. Obviously, I reckon the family are really proud of us both, having two brothers to go and play. And I see it now with, obviously, like I mentioned about my niece who's at Stockport Ladies now. You know, it's really good just to see the next generation like trying to keep it going within and around the family, which is great.
Yes, it's really good.
Hey up everybody, we're releasing all of our Patreon only video specials to everyone to enjoy over the summer. That means all of the special guest interviews with the players and the staff that we did for the 24-25 season. But if you want to watch all the new ones from now on into next season, support what we do and get some cracking extras, come and join us on Patreon. For £3 a month plus VAT, you will get early access to all of our special episodes, ad-free pods, 2 to 3 a week, monthly prize draws, we've given away signed shirts, merch and loads more in the past, and invites to exclusive live events with county legends. Yes, we will invite you to come to those live events and be part of the audience. Hit the link tree in the description to sign up and be part of it. As I said, £3 plus VAT a month. Thanks for your support, and as always, by county fans, for county fans.
Back to your career then, because we talk about your brother, but you've had a really good career with some good clubs as well. Let's not forget that. So obviously, Halifax, Gateshead, Salford. You spoke a lot about that on the I Trials podcast. I won't go too much into that. But I guess moving from Salford to Stockport, how did that move come about?
I think with football and I think with clubs, obviously the building process of a team that's going to compete and be consistent and challenge for those top spots, because as we know, the National League and the National League North, the way it bottlenecks with just one place, and then the playoffs is just super. Yeah. It's like, ridiculous in terms of the points you can accrue and not actually get promoted. It's such a difficult format. Obviously there's been chats and still chats going on about trying to extend and try and get it to 3 up and offer, because you see now a lot of the teams that come up from those non-league places, albeit Stockport were already ex-league club anyway, Wrexham's and that have obviously got a real big foundation once they've reformed. The others have gone on to do really well. So there's not really a massive gap between them. And I don't know whether for me they're sort of a little bit worried that the teams that do leave League Two might drop and we'll never see them again, which I completely understand. Is why they're a bit about opening them up. And also there's still a few teams in the National League, as I'm speaking now, that are still part-time. So how would they negotiate kind of going full-time? Because Stockport had that when I first arrived. So obviously I'd been at Salford and we'd got the promotion with Bernard and Jono, which, by the way, was probably one of the most interesting. But as a dressing room, when you talk about dressing rooms and staff getting you extra points off the field and just the dressing room, getting you over the line, that was fantastic. Literally everybody there was best pals. The managers felt like they were the players with you, and you just felt like, you wanted to go that extra to help them, and sort of what we built was they had from previous. And where I'm going with this is literally I'd come from Salford to get promotion in the National League, which was unbelievable for me. Again, I'd done an old full circle with Graham Alexander coming in at Salford. I'd previously been to Wembley with Fleetwood and wasn't in the squad that day, and I just had something in me that said, look, one day I'm going to go back and I'm going to be somebody that plays, let alone be the captain that day and lift the trophy. And being under Graham at the same time, I'd obviously played with players that obviously were good mates, so it was just fantastic that. And just to set up at Salford, of them sitting me down and saying, look, this is what we've got planned. I went through with Chris Casper a PowerPoint, and he delivered pretty much to where they are now. in terms of what they saw and the support from the class of '92. And albeit I'd had a good season at Gateshead, I'd had team of the season, and it was a step down to go back to National League North. But for me, it's not a case of sort of just being involved with a club that's got an EFL status. I want to be part of something that's either brand new or wants fixing and wants to get back to where it needs to be, because I just see myself, I always say it, I speak to managers, I speak to coaches. Listen, if the team plays well and I don't, I'd much rather prefer that. I'm such a team player, I'm such somebody that would take a big responsibility on looking after somebody else to the detriment of my own self, because it is all about the team. And it's all about the squad, it's all about the players in and around it. And whether my performance is affected, I would much rather be the one that sort of lifts the team from beneath rather than is the one that's just saying, look, it's all about me. It's never been that. And just probably from that, Chris had chats with probably Mark and Simon Wilson at the time. I hadn't met Mark by this. I had a brief chat with Simon Wilson. And literally the same scenario, albeit Stockport's, massive fan base, massive club, was obviously head and shoulders above the Salfords at the time for where Salfords had came from. But me being a Salford lad, living in Salford, and my wife Grace coming from Reddish, coming from the Stockport area, everything was just sort of fitting. Yeah. And again, albeit I'd just come out of, I'd had a bad injury and I'd just got back in the team at Salford. I had a metal plate put in my neck, I herniated a disc in my neck and literally missed, obviously we got promoted and literally missed the first league game for Salford City. There was talk about what you're going to be like to lead the team, and I knew I was never going to make it. So that was disappointing. But obviously after the back of that, I think they were sort of saying, look, Salford are going to go again. It's fine, it's absolutely fine, because I knew I'd done my role. And Stockport literally just revealed itself at the time. It was just a timing thing. And Chris had said to Simon, look, he's got all the attributes you're probably looking for to do something similar. And as I mentioned, it was with Jim. We were training at a school. I actually can't remember the name of the school, but my very first session was on AstroTurf, and it was a Thursday night. And it was, I think I'd signed. In fact, I do know when I signed, because Simon Wilson actually sent my wife flowers. It was Valentine's Day.
Oh, right.
So I'd signed on the Valentine's Day, and it was about 11, maybe half 11 at night from whenever I'd went in. And there was a few bits that were a bit tricky, trying to get across the line. But obviously Simon really pushed for it, and just seeing that, obviously the value of what they thought was just, yeah, do you know what, we're a brilliant match. Like, I want to give you everything, you'll already show me that you want to do everything for me. He sent my wife some flowers, obviously, the next couple of days, just to say apologies for keeping Liam. But she was probably saved from my cooking that night anyway, so she'll be, she won't be that bothered. And from there, I literally turned up. I'd gone from full-time, back in the EFL, to then dropping again to non-league.
So did you not play a league game for Salford then?
Yeah, so I played a couple of league games. I think my last league game we'd won. So I'd had a brief chat about what might go forward in terms of, look, the budget, they're going to push again, they want to go as high as they can, they feel they've got the momentum. I said, listen, it's fine, it's great. And Graham was excellent. The first time I was a bit, probably because I was naive and young, and I feel Fleetwood was such the best time for me. And I'll say it for any player that doesn't get in squads and doesn't get in teams and sometimes sits out and misses away trips. Really take them moments in and see what's happening around the place, because when you're playing and you're playing week in, week out, you miss things. And I picked up so much when I wasn't in the team. The way the manager behaved, the way the staff behaved, the way players behaved when they were in and out. I literally tried to take note of all these different bits. I had some fantastic leaders. There was Ryan Creswell there was Mark Roberts there was Nathan Pond. Stevie Jordan from City was there. All these types of players. It was probably one of the best clubs I could have gone into. It was such a great group. And I knew what Graham Alexander was all about. And he literally sat me down with such an honest chat, and from then we've always texted and just wished each other luck. Obviously he's over at Bradford, but even the club changes, he even sends a message and I'll send him a message, which just shows you like you can bridge gaps with management and have personal. And obviously the Salford thing was massive, that we won promotion. He dropped down to a level that he'd never been to before. And just off the back of the chat, he literally said, look, honestly, you're probably not going to play as much as you think you're going to play, but there's going to be a fantastic challenge for you. Everybody's sung your praises and pushed you in the direction of Stockport, go and have a chat with them, see what they're all about. And I'd obviously just played, I think it was, I'd come on as a sub actually, I think it was Cambridge away. I had a really good game when I came on. I came on after about 15 minutes, and when you come on as centre-back in a game, it's just absolute chaos. Because obviously you're either coming off and there's an injury happened, or you're coming on to try and shore things up when the other team are in an attacking ascendancy, and it's just like, right, get in there. I'd done that quite a bit at Salford. I'd done it in this game, played really well. I think we ended up, I can't remember the score, it was like 3-1 or 4-1, I think it was. And then after that, it was a case of, look, you're going to need to do it now. Don't miss this chance, don't miss this ball. You know, they're already lining up somebody to take your place. And I loved it from Graham, because it was just honest.
Yeah.
And it's just like, listen, I don't need anything else, because I'm such that type of person. Just tell me, it's fine, because there'll always be something else. And literally, Stockport just came up, spoke to Simon, and the chat with Simon was unbelievable. I'd obviously heard about the Karen turn, and we were going to use the facilities over, you know, the takeover was still going to go ahead.
Yeah.
And I'd signed off the back of it, not actually going through officially, but the plans were just, yeah, if this is the case, then it's going to be something massive. And I wanted to be part of the start of it. So I went into training, like I said, on the AstroTurf. It was freezing. Freezing when you obviously turn up as a first sort of session, you get bits of equipment, and it was just like barely anything. I was freezing. I was like doing the session, and Jim had started. I'd literally just met Jim, went down to, obviously what it won't be now was like a library had underneath the, where the changing rooms are now.
Yeah, the Bagara stand.
Yeah, the Bagara stand down, and he had like a library of these books, and I had a great chat with him. Obviously met him with my agent, but then went separately with Jim, and he was just, his philosophy, the way he was speaking, you could tell he was a very intelligent man, and different to what I'd had. So again, that's me thinking, you know, thriving around, you know, who am I going to be learning from? I'd met Dave Conlon at the time as well. I just thought, you know what, I'm jumping in this. I'm just going to go straight in. It's not the FL again. It's a step back, but it's a step back to come forward again. And I sort of calculated those things when I chose. But yeah, that night I just remember it was Astro. I think it was a session, it was like doing 1v1s, 2v2s, and I'd met Festus Arthur, who'd elbowed me in the nose within about 10 minutes of the session.
Not knowingly though, just his
no,
arms,
yeah, just a thing. He had been elbowed. There was loads of like younger lads, quite a young setup. I think Alex Curran was there at the time. I just remember it being that. I was just like, what have I done? A little bit. I was like, what have I done? It was like, we'd finished, there was like a tray, a platter of sandwiches for when you'd finished. Nick Donnelly was there, the physio was doing the physio work in the corridor at the school. I was like, oh wow, like this is completely from where I've just been to where I've
wasn't
come.
what was in the brochure, was it?
No, well, basically what I could see was going to be there, that was in the
Yeah.
distance, but again I was making that move similarly to Salford, where it was completely part-time, it was completely non-league, it was Woodley Sports, it was Halifax when I first went, but because I'd done them journeys, and I've probably been resilient from them moments as well, I was actually excited, and then there was a little bit of me like, what have I done? Is this the right thing? And I'll tell you now, Sam Minney and Jordan Key and Ash Palmer, the reason why they've probably been such legends at County was literally from day one. They were a group that took me in. Paul Turnbull was obviously the captain at the time. Just really embraced me and just sort of wanted to tap into what I've done. And they looked up a little bit to me because obviously I'd been through the promotions and stuff. But I'm so humbled to be like, what do you guys do here? What's your culture?
Yeah.
And Jim had created such a great culture with those guys leading the dressing room. It was something I'd seen at Fleetwood. It was something that I tried to create and did create at Salford with the group that we had. And you could see that this group, with a bit of quality going forward, was going to be the bedrock of something really, really good. And they'd already had a big connection with the county community. They'd already had a big connection with the supporters already, having obviously off the back of the promotion.
Yeah.
And obviously from Jim, he was saying, look, we've improved year on year up to now. We just now want to try and push. And I think I'd been in 2-3 weeks. I think we had a couple of good results, maybe 2-3 weeks, I'm not too sure. And we were summoned on one of the training nights to the Marriott at Hale. And it was Mark Stott announcing that he was taking over the club officially, and his visions of the club for the championship and X, Y, and Z, and we'd had food paid for at the Marriott, and he was like, "There's going to be no holding back. We're really going for this. You guys are the start of it," and that was it. Bang, from that moment. And then off the back of that, we'd played a few more games, and COVID hit.
Yeah.
And I think we were one of the last fixtures on the day, Maidenhead away. We just probably put ourselves into the playoffs. Around.
McAlinden, wasn't it?
Liam McAlinden. And that was that. And I was like, oh, well, you know, all this promise of this and that could be gone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? In terms of like businesses, and we didn't know the extent of it at that time. We were at the hotel. It was a bit sort of, we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know if we were on, we were off. We could see loads of games being postponed. We were still down there. Eventually we got to the game. It was nearly all barring ours had been called off, and we kicked off and we played. And then off the back of that, that was it. That was the last fixture, and we had a few communications, but the last time I actually turned in at Stockport County, I think I played 7 games. And yeah, it was just, you're going to be at home. We'll try and get round to you the best information we can, and that was that.
Right. But so, were you still training at home, like everyone was keeping themselves fit?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. It was such a new, like, we didn't know it was last a week, month.
Yeah.
And the time was just going on and going on. And what was really good was at the time and at the setup, I spoke to Nick Donnelly. I don't know whether I just proactively did it or just because I knew I'd had my little girl Meadow. She wasn't, what would she have been if that was, what year was COVID?
2020.
Yeah, so she would have been a year old. And we just moved into we're still there now, we just moved into a house in the November before this, which obviously tied in with the move to Stockport, which was all great. It was all just, you know, fitting together.
Yeah.
And I sort of knew, listen, it's just going to be me, Grace. We've got a dog and my little girl, so I was literally happy because obviously started football, just changed clubs. It was sort of petering out to the back end. We had a big chance of pushing for the playoffs with the form we had. And obviously it was a bit of a reset. And obviously the longer and longer it went on, I'd literally been into the ground at Edgeley Park and I took a barbell, I took a load of weights. I'd had a bench at home. I was just trying to make do, and obviously everyone was doing these runs, so we had a group on, the county group, doing videos for sending out to people, of doing like little keep you up challenges.
I can't remember how long it lasted. How long did that actual, before getting back into training, last? It was months and months, wasn't it? Or was it? I can't remember.
I actually can't remember. The only thing I remember was, off the back of it, we'd moved into Carrington. So the next time that we were talking about training was we'd gone into Carrington.
Right.
And it was all the measurements for the COVID tests, the outdoor tents, can't really be inside with anybody. And really weird. But obviously Jim had to assemble a new group to go again for the new season. We'd had the disappointing news that Barnet had done us on points per game because they'd played less due to their pitch not being great, and they'd played in the FA Cup, and we thought we might sneak in and be one of the beneficiaries of the rulings, but we actually were one of the ones that suffered that year. So it was a case of starting again and going again for that league, but obviously we'd added additions anyway. And what I really liked about the club, and I could tell anyway, like I said about Simon Wilson and Jim, was there was players who this was the year that we're going to go full time now. So there was players still within the contracts that the contracts were finishing, the
like
lockdown was in,
kind of thing,
the furlough was in,
yeah.
And basically, whether it was down to fully Jim, but Jim was a big part of it, that I think might have been Paul, it might have been Sam, those types of names were extended to ensure that they were looked after payment-wise throughout all the difficult, and I thought that was really excellent of the club to do that, and they've gone on to do some fantastic sort of gestures since, particularly for myself, but obviously for those lads that have done so well for them before, and yeah, it was really weird time because I obviously embraced a new challenge. We'd started off really well. Danny Lloyd was in as well, so obviously I played with Danny Lloyd. What type of other players would we have had at the time? I'd obviously heard of Ash, I'd heard of Keano, played against Keano when I was at Salford, he was at Boston. Sam Minion. It was a really strong team.
John Rooney.
John Rooney had come in, so John Rooney was literally, I'd say, you mentioned me about marquee signing, I would say John was the marquee signing.
Yeah.
In terms of, obviously, yes, we know who his brother was, but he'd just been promoted with Barrow, he's scored X amount of goals, assists, he's captained them, and he's obviously come off the back of getting himself promoted. So whether we thought, he come quite late actually in pre-season, I think it was, or we'd done quite a few weeks. But we've been training on the pitch at Edgeley Park, and over the day John turned up. I played against John before, so I knew what type of character, and I thought, yeah, that's the type. Somebody who's not going to let anybody off with anything.
Yeah.
Who's going to challenge the group with his personality, because I feel like when you let things go swept under the table a little bit, it takes away the leadership. And John was obviously a very strong character. We had Connor Jennings that came in, was a very strong character. And those changing rooms that I've always been in, has always had strong characters.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, we had a strong core as well. So Ben Hinchcliffe, fantastic Ben to go from where he was and is now, you know, speak to him even now and just say, like, you know, he's got back in again, and he's just, I think that's what happens in non-league. You just get resilient, you just keep going, you just keep, you know, someone will say no one week and then you just, you don't give up. And Ben's obviously epitomises that. He's the type of character that I am, and Ash is, and moments Ash would have been on the bench, and Sam Minion and Keane, they just come back from that. And there's the type you need as a core group, because the leaders form everything. The moment that the leaders are off, the rest of the group drops. They're the ones that look up to, and they were fantastic. And obviously John's, I'd probably put him in a group of being a bit of a maverick. He was a maverick. I won't go as far as saying he's Eric Cantona, but that type where the manager needs to probably deal with him a little bit differently.
Yeah. Did Jim struggle to deal with him?
I wouldn't say he struggled, because his form was still excellent. I think for what Jim stood for, one of the very first things that Jim spoke to us about was about his beliefs in fair play, sportsmanship, and he had awards for that. And probably off the back of that, I was thinking, probably more so me, like, nice teams don't win or get promoted. You know, we talk about dark arts a lot in some of the sort of punditry things now, but there is ways that you can win by playing fair as well, and I understood that. And I understood that if you got a yellow card and you got a red card, you were letting the team down. So I fully understand the way he wanted to set that tone. I think with John, the way that he had success at other clubs, Conrad had success at other clubs, myself had success at other clubs, was being very at the forefront of, I wouldn't say aggressive, but I'd say toeing the line in terms of match day performances and how you can get the small 1%. And I'd only seen that because I'd learned the hard way as well, myself. And you see it even more so now. I'm in a role now, obviously going back to a club like Rochdale. It's got a very young group that want to play football the right way and do the right things. They want to play, get the ball on the floor, work the overloads. But I think the game can never lose that duel, fight, scrap, battle, because, you know, pitches, decisions, everything that surrounds sort of non-league, and even the earlier stages of the FL, League 2, League 1 will always have that in it. And I think the more that you've got that within you in the moments that are tough and in the moments that need that, that's what gets you through, that's what gets you points. And John, I thought, it'd be probably against what Jim's beliefs were in terms of the way he ran, the way he sort of carried himself. He was emotional, John, so was Connor, but for the right reasons, sometimes maybe not always the right ways, but that's just how passionate they were and probably what had suited them and got them success previously. And I was kind of like that. Having them in the building kind of get me a little step back a little bit to be like the balance in between. And I think they were fantastic for the group. I think for what a young lad, I would say a young lad would need, is a bit of a wake up in moments where, you know, things aren't easy-ozy. You know, you're going to need to be counted for, you're going to need to be dragged through the edge, and you're going to need to be outed a little bit. Yeah. And they certainly did that. I certainly did that. but the group had understanding. And albeit from that moment, obviously, we'd had probably a few moments where we'd butted heads to try and get the right answer, really. I'd probably said things, and John had probably said things, and Conor had probably said things that in the heat of the moment, if you reflect back on it, would you still say them if you waited another half a day? Probably not.
Yeah.
But do them moments need that? Absolutely. So, you know, I'm modelled around watching Roy Keane, those type of characters that still say how it is now.
Yeah.
And obviously the people that watch Sky Sports, although they get a lot of this tactical analysis now, which is a real good insight into the game and how the game's going, they still, you see it on Twitter, you see it on some of the stuff that comes out of Roy Keane's mouth, Jimmy Carragher's mouth. It's great.
Yeah.
Because it's literally, you know, sums up what the game still is.
Yeah.
And he puts it so bluntly that you have to laugh about it, but he's absolutely, you know, he's factually right. And they was kind of the conversations that we would have had. I know he's sort of said, you know, I'd be sticking it on somebody in the dressing room. He's absolutely right. You're going to need that.
Yeah.
You're going to need that. And I don't think that should ever leave the game. And I think as a group, to have the core and have this sort of group that pushed was a real good mix.
Yeah. So just moving forward a bit, so Jim leaves, obviously, and obviously the fan base does what the fan base does, and we won't go into any of that, but we bring Simon Rusk in. How was Simon Rusk different to Jim then, in terms of sort of tactical approach and shape and setup and all that, and maybe man management as well? Was that completely different?
Well, first of all, I thought Jim was fantastic in his tactical moves, particularly if there was an in-game. And sometimes you see it now, games are happening and managers maybe have to wait till half-time. I mean, there's a lot of analysis now, so there's somebody who sits up there and can basically pass the message down to say what's what, and
and they've got like
it's a bit robotic in terms of the number. Yeah, in terms of like, you know, this person needs to be here and this person. But Jim had a real eye for in-game sort of moves that he could make and subs that he made. I mean, I've seen him make a sub and bring that same sub off.
Yeah. Happened to Sam Walker twice.
Sam Walker, yeah. See, it happened to Adam Thomas. Again, that might have been a disciplinary one in terms of like, but changes that he made were bold, and some wouldn't have liked it, but who would? Because you want to be out there, you want to play, you want to represent, you want to sort of build your own CV up. But again, Jim did all them things for the team, and I really enjoyed and sort of liked the fact that he could take a game, look at it, see it, the detail, and help us within that. Not wait for half time, not wait for full time, and the results happened. And he had a lot of real big effects, positive effects when he did those kind of tweaks and changes. So tactically, I mean, I'd never done it before. We spent nearly a full week on throw-ins. Literally throw-ins.
Well, no throwing coach.
No, it wasn't a long throw. It was such an easy to make an overload on a throw-in, to keep possession. We talk about Notts County on about the corners at the time being an aspect of possession and not to just put it in the box and to keep it. Jim was already doing that. Jim was already organising. I think was it my first game or one of my first games? I literally had the ball and I took a long throw into the box. The header got headed out and I crossed it back in for Ash Palmer to score, and we were equalised. I want to say it was the Barnet game, and we won 1 at half time. I thought, brilliant, I felt there. I've just done an initiative. Jimmy, what are you doing? He said, we don't work the long throw. And I'm thinking, but I've just crossed it, he's headed it out, I've crossed it back in, and Ash just, nah. So I like that. I like the way that he had something set, and he was already setting in, you know, we're a team here. You're not just going to do stuff on your own.
Yeah.
And off the back of that, I was really intrigued. We spent some weeks on throw-ins. He did a lot of that, a lot of set-piece work, because he knew how vital it was in games. So tactically, I thought he was brilliant. In the sessions from when we left Jim and went to Simon was completely different. Sort of going down the route where you talk about Pep and Vincent Kompany and how the game, you take the game and you basically work back in details to what your training session looks like. We'd have 6 or 7 phases. We'd have 2 pitches set up back to back, and you play a little bit on one pitch, the ball would get switched onto the next pitch, and it'd be all encompassing to what the game would look like and what transitions would look like. And he obviously came from Brighton, who's got a fantastic academy set up, and obviously got a fantastic with the playing, the philosophy they've got there, the coaches that they've got, and some of the stuff he delivered was of what you're sort of starting to see now, which is real detailed ways of playing and build up and patterns, and obviously from that, the lads that have been with Jim, it was a new thing for them. It was brand new for me because obviously I'd been in and around non-league, and my manager Graham Alexander was obviously attacking, but he had his strikers working outside the box. It was running, it was fighting, it was tackling, it was trying to play percentages, whereas this was more a bit of a patient build-up, trying to work into areas. A little bit more now, what you probably see County a little bit now.
Yeah.
That was starting to come in. But as a coach, he had a different personality. So obviously Jim's personality was, I'd say, very outgoing. He was very honest, he was himself, and he made decisions off what his beliefs were. I think Simon's were more cultured around what tactical decisions were made, more sort of a coach-based decision around what it would look like tactically. But obviously within that, he would still motivate. I thought his very first introduction when we met him at Carrington was very purposeful. And when we first sort of was introduced, and the way he put himself across was really, really professional. I'd heard about how people had spoke about him in the England setup. So I really was excited to obviously have this opportunity to work differently for me, because like I said, I hadn't been through an academy. Yeah. So to go back working through academy sessions, I would have been 30. I was at 30 anyway, so like the backside of sort of the game. Can't teach an old dog new tricks, but I was literally really thriving on what I could learn here under him. And his sessions were, for the mind, they were complicated in terms of how the layout was and how you would move from one drill to the next. But you hear it in Vincent Kompany's interviews, and now you try and overload the player with information so that it makes it, on match days, a lot easier. So there was a lot of tight spaces, a lot of tight possessions, and a real structure to how we wanted to play. And that season, I thought, barring obviously the disappointment of the Hartlepool game, I thought we had a fantastic season. I think Ben had clocked up 18, 19 clean sheets. There was a few of us in team this season. We were on a real good unbeaten run. I can't remember how many.
20 odd matches.
20 odd matches.
Yeah.
The goals were flying in.
Yeah.
Different types of goals. We were going into games. I'd had that feeling before where you just knew even if the other team had scored, we were going to win the game with the quality, with everybody being on this structured wavelength. We'd added quality in the team again, and just that game. Obviously, circles and roundabouts in football. Dave Challoner.
Yeah. Well.
With his Hartlepool side at the time, and obviously we were disappointed that day. I still think we'd done enough to maybe get something more out of the game. We had some real good chances. I think Paddy had one earlier on. That was probably a real blow for us. Another marquee signing, Paddy, I thought, and you know Paddy anyway.
Yeah.
When somebody comes from a league above, how are they going to act with somebody? And I knew I'd come from a league above previously and really wanted to engage and interact and buy into what the lads were doing, but then take it another step and push and drive and demand further than what they've. And there could have been Sam, there could have been Keenan, could have been Ash, Ben. How many captains there could have been within that group. And then obviously Paddy comes and you think, how's he going to be? I'd had Adam Rooney at Salford, who came from, he'd had a fantastic career, he'd been in the Scottish Prem and played internationally, and so humble. Particularly really important part of the pitch, forward pitch, because their movements are what sort of set the team off.
Yeah.
His intensity, his work rate off the ball, his demands from other people. He'd score goals at all the levels above, and just to come in and just be one of the lads, and when you have a coffee and you sit with where at Carrington, just be dead engaged with everybody. I think that was a massive signing for Stockport County, Paddy.
He's another one, isn't he, who's got a bit of needle, he can have a bit of a nasty streak, can't he?
Yeah, so similar to...
I kind of think we missed that now, but when he came in again, I thought, marquee signing. So we're building on yourself, John Rooney, and then you keep
Yeah, those types of characters Paddy was more, I'd say, patient in his delivery of stuff, which often is quite powerful because when it does come out, you listen. But the powerful moments when they take the scruff of the group, your John Rooney's, your Connors, those type of characters, the rest are a bit shook, and it's like, do you know what? Yeah, because otherwise, if we don't, we're going to get left behind.
Yeah.
I think Paddy had that confidence to know that, similar to me, he's going to drive this. I was going to drive this. He was going to drive this, and the other lads had a real massive respect. Probably Paddy because he'd been at such a high level and scored goals. Maybe myself because I'd obviously had promotions with a couple of other teams previous to the Stockport one. And basically we looked after. I wouldn't say looked after Simon because it wasn't a case of that. But I think similar to what I did at Salford was I took sort of away the responsibility of the manager on the actual dressing room by taking on a different role and responsibility of looking after them, and Paddy did too. Ryan Crosdale was fantastic in them moments as well, and then again I'll go back to that group that you'd had since Conference North.
Yeah.
They were always there, and because they never parted, it's such a core. I could probably go as far as saying the class of '92 in terms of having such a group that stuck together, that done something socially away from football more often than not. Was like the glue that made it all stick together, really. And like I said, adding the quality that came from higher up the levels and the bits of maverick and quality that can win games. We probably needed a fit Paddy that day against Hartlepool, and we forced him and he wasn't. I think he missed the chance and he'll probably hold his hands up that day. I mean, he's more than accounted for it now massively. And he won't even think about that moment anymore. But towards that day, if we'd have had a fully fit Paddy, I think we might have been talking about maybe doing something earlier, but I wouldn't. It is what it is, and I wouldn't want to swap that because obviously the year after we go and do what we do.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather win it. Having already been there as a playoff winner, win it outright, and the way we won it was unbelievable. Yeah,
because a lot of footballers, like punditry footballers, they do say, don't they? They say they'd rather win it through the playoffs because it's a better feeling. Like going to the playoff and winning the playoff final, but like you just said there, to win it outright, especially to pip Wrexham as well, and we've got to talk about Wrexham, because you captained that National League winning team, didn't you? Pipping Wrexham at the end, and they fucking annoyed everybody that season. They still do, to be fair.
Well, it's come back round again, hasn't it? And you've done it again, haven't you? So perfect.
So that season then, so if we just wind back to the start of that season where Ruski's still in charge. I mean, on the pitch we could see where it was going wrong. What from your perspective, sort of went wrong and culminated in him obviously getting
So I just think off the back of the season that we'd done really well. I think it was actually a bigger disappointment than we all thought at the time. I spoke to the group after the game to say that, look, success isn't like defined on this one result. Like, we've had massive success as a club, and although the disappointment of the day, look where Stockport has come from, when it restarted again, and to finish third and have all the sort of accolades that we got as a group without actually getting the promotion, is still a magnificent achievement. What we were doing, the football we were playing, and the group that we'd assembled, we probably thought that we were going to go into the new season and do more of the same. We'd added, which is probably where you start to see now, I think Simon Wilson's been unbelievable for the club in terms of his eye for business, player, development. We started to see Ben Barclays, Will Fish, those type of players that were going to be projects. I mean, even just to get Man United to now start entrusting us with their types of players, that started then, and look where it is now for the types of players that you've been able to assemble into the squad, and because of the facilities down at Carrington, for the football that's played, for the club that it is now, and we sort of started to see those. I just don't know whether the combination of it, straight off the back of us still having the disappointment of not going up, fans were back in, which whether it helped us or not the season before. I've been to places, and I'll obviously mention Oldham, obviously mention Tranmere, that were relegated to the National League with massive fan bases, to start struggling against teams that they've probably only come up against in the FA Cup previously. is a real frustration for the fans. And they expect better, they want better, and I fully get it. No player's ever going out there to not do well, I'll tell you that. They all have, like I mentioned before, a CV that they want to stay in and around the game, and they want to build a good relationship with support and community, and we'll probably go to the Bolton game as a firework, but there was previous moments before that, but the firework that really started the snowball rolling, I thought, the Bolton game, the turnaround in that. I've started to see it now at Oldham. Once that snowball happens, I saw it at Tranmere.
Yeah.
It's hard to stop. And a bit like a dressing room, there'll probably be difficult moments until you get to that success. And I've had difficult moments myself in dressing rooms with players that have got the best out of players. I've had difficult moments with supporters off the back of frustration and losing to teams they've not really come across. But it's all guided towards trying to be better and trying to understand how we need each other. So whether that helped us that season, where we did really well, and we could play the football we were playing without sort of, because I think there were still a couple of poor results within that, the season that we finished third. You know, supporters can turn, and if they've got quite a decent fan base, it carries.
Yeah.
And it becomes difficult for players, and I don't know whether that, having the fans back in, the expectation of where we'd finished, the disappointment, just the expectation again to go one better. You see it now a bit in the Premiership with like the likes of Arsenal falling short. They're going to go and do it this year because they just fell short last year.
Yeah.
It's not always the case. I just think the combination was off. And then, like I said, supporters were probably frustrated that we didn't start as well as we finished. Players were frustrated with how the results were going. I think we'd lost to Yeovil, to Dagenham. Really disappointing results.
Barnet.
Barnet.
Barnet was the one that I think was
Barnet,
the last one.
Yeah. And as much as you're trying to analyse and go back and do the training ground stuff, you're going into the next game and it's massive, massive pressure.
Yeah.
And one of the sort of standout moments for me was we've got this lovely analysis room at Carrington, which was unbelievable. Jim had it as well, to use Jim Gannon. But one of the things, Will Collar stood up at the time, and Simon had said, "Look, what is it?" And he basically said, "Listen, I'm a bit scared to play in front of, the crowd when it turns. I get a bit nervous. My football gets nervous." And the lads were just like, that's unbelievable for him just to come out and say, "That's how you're feeling."
Yeah. Because
because now I'm screaming and shouting, saying, "You need to do this and you need to do your job." I understand now how Will Collar's feeling in them moments. And we had Will Collars, we had Will Fishes, we had younger players that I needed to help, and the other senior players needed to help because we hadn't really had that. I'd had it previously, but some of the players wouldn't have even had that. Frustration from supporters, spilling out onto the pitch. It really, really does, talk about psychology. There wasn't probably enough in the game for... It's probably why they send players out on loan to kind of get a bit of a snippet of what it does feel like. But in terms of that, there wasn't really off the back of it any support before it to say, look, this is, if the crowds are against, which they're fully entitled to do, how do we react as a player? How do we get the best out of it? And whether that season, like I said, helped us and this one didn't. Obviously we saw, was it 13 games? How many games was he in, Simon? More? 16?
In his second season? Oh, yeah, don't know. Yeah, probably about right. 10, 12, something like that.
Obviously, that's a period that quite a lot of owners act in terms of not losing the season. I think we were below mid-table with the ambitions to get promoted. The ambitions that Mark Stoddard previously came and spoke to us about at the Marriott. And like I said, business-wise and decision-making-wise, Simon, Mark, the club have been fantastic in all the decisions they've made to get, obviously, to the point where they are now. So I felt, and I always feel when I'm a captain, when a manager loses his job, a real guilt that could you have done more? Which, if performances aren't, you're not winning, then yeah, obviously. You see it a lot at
Do you think that's what it was in that moment? Because from the game before to the Bolton game away, because that was his first match, I think. No, it was, we had a 1-1 draw before that, I think. But certainly the Bolton match away at 2-2. Me as a fan, I looked at that and I thought, it's the same tools in the box. What's different here? You think he'd have 5 days training with them or something stupid like that?
No, I think he'd come in and just was sort of doing the touchline and rolled out. I think he rolled out the same team on the Bolton game that had played. Maybe in the Dover game, I think we won under
Dave Conlon.
Under Swan, and Dave Conlon won 5-3, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
Another game that stands to mind for me was my first game with Ethan Pye.
Right.
And Ethan was unbelievable in that game. You go to Dover away and you know what you're kind of getting. It's getting in your box, it's blocking shots, it's being a defender. The pitch isn't great, sandy, or it's wet, or it's dry and bobbly. Sars had arrived. We had Scott Quigley. So that type of quality was well within the group now. And Ethan that day was man of the match. He was fantastic. I could see straight away he's going to have a great career. He literally did everything. He actually played like a captain that day. I know he's been recently given the armband for one of the games. When you talk about, I'm in the academy now looking at players and what sort of attributes they've got, technically they'll be great. What else have they got? Ethan showed that there's a lot of young lads now that get to a certain place and then they think they've made it, or they have this kind of new way they want to promote themselves as a bit of a brand, or a bit sort of out there, to be different, which is fine, because we embrace culture, we embrace different. But Ethan had that old school fight and grit, and just listened. If you told him, he listened, but he would also dish out a couple of little bits, and I'm like, do you know what, I love that. He's shone out that day, and I'm not surprised he's where he is now. But yeah, we'd be off the back of that. Obviously Dave, fantastic guy. But not mentioned Dave yet, but Dave's brilliant, still brilliant now. Had a chat with him at the FA Youth Cup the other week. Glad he's still in and around the place because he's been a massive sort of balance to Dave Conlon, yeah, top guy. Had some real good one-to-one moments where we could just be dead honest with each other, and he'd probably feed that back to the manager, and feedback stuff, real bit of a man in the middle. So I'm glad he's still in and around it. He brings top value. He took it. He won his game, which won, and yeah, Dave picked, I think, similar team, and we went to Bolton. Fantastic following. I still see the picture now that I've got. We're in the pink kit, and the crowd at the back of this, unbelievable. What a big day that was. Big result as well, and we were actually frustrated that we only came away with a replay, because we thought that day, albeit we're up against quality, we actually showed enough to get through that game. And obviously Dave Challoner's seen what he's seen and probably had plans for himself. We'd had players in and around it that hadn't been playing, and I actually got dropped the game after. It was a league game after that, and I was actually dropped. Again, another moment in my career I'll always look back on and be like, right, okay, is this a challenge for me to step up, or is this you saying that you've seen enough? Because obviously Dave would have known about me from previous seasons and delivered at other teams. Probably would have been his type of player in terms of leadership. But he went with somebody, and from there, basically, I'd sat and watched a couple of games. I actually sat and watched the Bolton away, which was probably one of the best moments for County fans.
Yeah, the 5-3.
The 5-3, we'd gone, I think it was 2 own goals, wasn't it? 2-0 down.
Definitely one own goal from Ash, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it was Kitch's header as well.
Yeah, oh God, yeah.
Kitch's header past Ethan, I remember that, and I just thought, wow. But then from there, the reaction from the players, the reaction from the supporters to not actually give it, you just saw how much of a connection between both players and supporters there was. And from getting out of that moment, I just knew there and then that was going to be what's going to push us. That's going to be what's going to get us over the line. He instantly did that, Charlie. Just that connection with the supporters, that kind of attitude of, listen, I know what it looks like. I'm going to come in and deliver, get behind it because it's going. And I can't remember how many fans were in the stadium. I think it sold out. Was that for the first time?
Completely full. First time for a long time.
Yeah. It was unbelievable. The atmosphere was unbelievable. The scenes at the end were unbelievable. Lad obviously was best mates with Ant. So Sars was off the back of leaving Bolton on whatever terms he left Bolton on, and then so just moments that obviously I'll never forget in that. Was it Ollie Crankshaw with the last one? They still replay it now on the FA Cup. They're the moments you want to make as a club, as a group. And just from there went strength to strength. And took me a little while, but I don't know how many games it was to get back into it. But like I said, similar to Ben, Ash and that's why teams are successful. The players that get left out, get dropped, they're not in it for themselves. They're not looking to blame or make excuses or try and cause a bit of unrest. They're back into training, they're looking to work hard, they're looking to try and strengthen, to try and get back in that manager's plans. Because the harder they're working away from the bit, that they're not in the squads, the player in the position, I think Jordan Keane was in my position at the time, and Ash, they knew that. And they knew the performance I could deliver, and they knew I was, fighting to get back. And that pushed them as well. And that's what happens to a good squad. The players who aren't in the starting 11 actually become the most important players in the group. And I thought Clint came in, Clint Hill, fantastic, obviously great experience as a defender, the levels he's played at, worked with us really well. The sessions were tough, it was intense, it was a lot of running, and he said that. He just literally put on a piece of paper, Dave, he was like, this is Hartlepool stats. This is what the Hartlepool defenders do in the games. This is what you're doing in your games. And it was down. Our stats were down. He said, you get to this.
Right.
And even in games we'd be playing, we'd be winning. I think we were winning 4-0 away at Altrincham, one of the games was. I could hear him shouting on saying, you've not hit your running stats yet.
Yeah. Blimey.
If you haven't hit your running stats, you'll do them in a week this
So
week.
what sort of stats are we talking? Are we talking about distance ran?
Yeah, so there's total
blocks
distances,
or
there's high
tackles?
speed distance, so obviously your speed's measured at your maximum. A percentage of that is your high speed running. When you go over that, you then go into your high speed threshold. And he actually wanted players to get into the thousands.
Right.
So 1,000 metres high speed. And you see it in a lot of clubs now, they have a 1,000 metre high speed challenge. And basically he wanted them churned out most weeks. And you were seeing Sash, Crosby, Will, 13k, 1,000 high speed distance, most games.
Blimey.
The defenders were doing, we were at maybe 9.5k, he wanted 10.5. I was like, for a defender, like we're defending. But we're winning 4-0 and he's like, look, you're only at 10, you need 500 more. So go and push yourself, go and try and get involved in the attacks. One of the main ones was get your sprint back, look purposeful. Go up for a corner, you and Ash, get yourself sprinting back, because that sprint distance from there to your halfway line, turning, getting ready, getting set, it's going to strike fear into the opposition as well as you getting. Do you know what I mean? They ain't going to be looking to do any quick kicks. If you're sprinting back and getting set, they'll be thinking, oh, we've got to go again at Stockport.
Yeah.
And all that just literally was just...
It epitomises what he always says, doesn't it? Intensity is our identity.
Yeah.
It's like he lives and breathes it pretty much, doesn't he, with the stats as well.
And obviously, luckily now, and I knew of it anyway, which is obviously probably a reason why I've gone into the academy and they made a space for me, which I'm really grateful of, is those aspects of the principles of what it is, front foot, playing the opponent's half. We deliver that now within the academy and what it looks like, and the sessions on press and on transitions, it's purposeful, and we're pushing the children, we're pushing the kids to make sure they're getting the most out of the sessions. And if they're doing that now at 9s, 10s, even at 8s, I think where they're going to be in terms of, we've had quite a lot of successes recently bringing players through, Cody's, Ethan's, that type of thing, where those kids who are at 9 and 10 now are going to be. Hopefully still within the academy at County, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start attracting as well interest going further afield. But in terms of where we are now and what we've seen in a couple of the age groups, I think they're based over now at Carrington anyway, really close to the first team. I think Charlie just handpicks and grabs when he trusts what they've done throughout the academy is going to be fine for him for when he does his sessions, and he's actually shown that within the game against Blackburn. Yeah. What a young side and experienced a few making debuts. They put out in that game, which was quite a strong Blackburn side that day.
Yeah, it was.
And for them, that'll be, if they look back and you ask any of these who do a podcast with you in a few years, that'll be one of their moments when they were like, wow, that's just woke me up to what football really needs to be. That's my first taste, whatever the scoreline was in the end. Do you know what I mean? They're the moments that you have to really take in and learn from, not the moments that you're winning all the time. So a lot of them would have gained a lot out of that experience, and that's just what the club's doing now. So for me, Dave, I thought, as much as I didn't play as much as I wanted to, and albeit the season we can finish, sort of go through it towards the back end, ended how it did, I'll always go back now and be so positive about how Dave Challoner and Clint went about their work. Whether it was solely around me, which it wasn't, or whether it would have been, I'll always say good things, because they were really positive and they were a big driving force in why we got over the line in such a tight race, and probably for everybody watching, and it's probably one of the main reasons now the National League's getting a lot more coverage in terms of what we left was then chased with Notts County and Wrexham. Yeah. That's only been a massive help for the National League as well.
Yeah.